Another strong performance from Justin Fields against the Dallas Cowboys was far more important for the Chicago Bears than the final score and the result of the game.
You are Locked On Bears, your daily Chicago Bears podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On Bears, and I'm your host, Lorin Cox. I'm here to bring you your daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. You can follow me on Twitter at CoxSports1. You can follow the podcast on Twitter at Locked On Bears. You can like Locked On Bears on Facebook. Join the Locked On Bears Facebook group for even more Bears talk. And make sure you hit that subscribe button on the Locked On Bears YouTube channel to keep up with all of our video podcasts as well. Thanks for making the Locked On Bears podcast your first listen today, and hopefully every single day. On the show today, we go back through the Bears' 49-29 loss to the Dallas Cowboys and why, losing sucks and there's no moral victories, but we kind of know that the Bears are going to lose some games this season, and the Cowboys were 9-point favorites. It wasn't unexpected for a Bears loss, but what was most important was the continued success of Justin Fields, largely in spite of a lot of what was going on around him on the field. We'll kind of look at his performance individually, where the defense particularly struggled, and kind of where the Bears go from here in terms of the weird trajectory that this season has gone, and kind of have swung full spectrum on both good and bad for both the offense and the defense. But to me, this is all about Justin Fields, because he had what looked, upon watching it live the first time through, like a very strong game. It once again felt like he was in rhythm, not all the time, and there was a slow start to it, but especially, once things got rolled a little bit in that second quarter and to some extent in the second half, you could really see him settling in and feeling quite confident and being able to move this offense in a way that was consistently productive. The stat line of 151 yards isn't going to blow anybody away, but 17 of 23 with a couple of touchdown passes in there and a rushing touchdown and his rushing stats puts together a holistically nice performance from Justin Fields. And all things considered, you'd think in most NFL football games, under reasonable circumstances, if you can get your offense to score 29 points, that's a winning formula. That should be a winning offensive performance with even a league average defense. Of course, the Bears did not have league average defensive play in this game, and we're playing against a very good offense on the other side of the ball. But let's not forget that they were also playing against a very solid defense on the other side of the ball. Not that the Cowboys were like, the team shutting every single opponent down, but I believe they're like top 5, if not top 3 in like points and yards allowed this season. Like, they've been very, very good. And the Bears put up 29 points on them, more than any other opponent this season, which includes the Philadelphia Eagles, who are, 7-0 now, and includes, the Rams have been struggling, but the Giants and the Buccaneers and the Lions, who've all had some pretty big games offensively at points in this year. The Bears scored the most, and so much of that, felt like close to 100% of that, was like single-handedly wielded by Justin Fields. Not to take anything away from another really strong rushing game from Khalil Herbert, and of course David Montgomery doing some of the dirty work in there on the ground game, and the offensive line plays a factor there, and the receiver actually caught some of the passes and didn't drop them all on a few of the really nice balls that Justin Fields had thrown. But there was so much that seemed to be clicking for him. The deep bomb to Velus Jones dropped, but like perfect pass right in his hands in front of him. That's a beautiful ball, especially after he had underthrown Equanimeous St. Brown on a very similar deep pass early in the game. Came back confident, loaded up, fired deep, and had the perfect ball dropped in there for his fast wide receiver. And he just consistently was hitting wide receivers open across the field, intermediate, deep, underneath, left, right, middle, and spreading the ball around and getting rid of the ball in much more rhythm. Right? It seems like there have been a lot of games this season where Fields will randomly just miss one of those easy throws. It's the tight end in the flat or the running back on a little swing route or something where it's like, why did he miss such an easy throw? And I don't remember off the top of my head any of those kind of missed passes that you just are baffled. Like, why did he miss that? Like, there was one or two plays where he was either hit as he was thrown, or the ball may have been tipped as a pressure was coming in and the ball floated up and one of them was intercepted and called back by a penalty. But like every seemingly inaccurate pass seemed to have some sort of explanation that was not just like Fields missed that one. He seemed to be very, very dialed in as a passer. And I also thought that he was very dialed in terms of pocket presence. That we haven't gone through the replay and the all 22 just yet. That'll be tomorrow's podcast. And I want to verify some of this stuff on the second watch through. But I've been paying specific attention whenever we get a good replay on the broadcast. When Justin Fields leaves the pocket, is there pressure coming when he leaves the pocket? Or is an offensive lineman being beat or been beaten, and then that's why he's leaving the pocket? Or is he just seeing ghosts and feeling that pressure too early and just leaving the pocket prematurely? And it felt like in this game, from everything that I could see live, every time they showed a good replay of him leaving a pocket, there was always pressure coming. It wasn't always super, super fast pressure, but he would wait appropriately to leave only once he needed to leave because of the pass rush starting to bear down on him. Wasn't a perfect game from Fields. I think there was a couple of missed reads here and there. He admitted as much on one of the 2-point conversion plays where he was sacked. And there were a couple read option plays too where I thought he probably should have given it and when he kept it for himself. But like all the sort of like foundational important things for a young quarterback, Justin Fields seemed to be doing in this game. And that's really, really good to build off of last week and to kind of keep this upward trend going for him. Because I think as the season goes on, Justin Fields is going to have another bad game at some point. There will be better games. There will be worse games, right? It's not just going to be this smooth sailing for the entire rest of the season. It's just the way it goes in the NFL. But to continue to pick up where he left off against the Patriots and sustain some of this success in much more of a comfort and rhythm with the QB rushing in there as well and really making that a more dynamic offensive piece, really got to be encouraged about what you see here. And plenty of people are going to wring their hands about the Micah Parsons fumble where he jumped over Micah Parsons and Fields took the blame for that after the game. And, that's good leadership to take the blame for it. But I am the least bit worried about that play in particular. I would much rather have Fields jump over the guy and not risk getting injured or anything as opposed to trying to tackle him and I know you want him to just touch the ground and I get it. It's easy to touch him to the ground, but and I'm not saying Fields did the good and the right thing there, but I'm totally okay with him having a clean, safe jump over a player to avoid any unnecessary contact. There were 10 other guys in the field that also needed to bring down Micah Parsons and did not. So after what we saw what happened to Jay Cutler in 2012, I'm never going to get too mad at a quarterback for how he responds after a turnover in terms of trying to make a play, because you just don't need to risk absolutely anything. And it's like, all right, he jumped. Cool. You didn't touch him. You prefer you could just put a hand on him, but let's not wring our hands over this and make this some bigger thing than it needs to be. The bigger thing is this Bears defense giving up 49 points. I guess 42 because the fumble return for a touchdown. But regardless, the team as a whole giving up 49 points. We'll kind of look at some of what went wrong with this Bears defense, what we can tell so far, and what we'll need to look at the all 22 film to verify next on Locked On Bears. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp Therapy Online. BetterHelp is here to help you feel better, to work on your mental health, because life doesn't come with a user manual. So when it's not working for you, it's really normal to feel stuck. But BetterHelp has online therapists that are trained to help you figure out the cause of some of the challenging emotions and learn productive coping skills. Online therapy is such an important part of my own personal mental health regimen. I have a therapist that I meet with virtually online every single week, once a week. And it's a really important part of my process, because just in the same way that you go to the gym to take care of your body, not necessarily because your body is broken, right? It's not like this isn't like physical therapy, but just do the same thing with mental health, right? Your brain might not be broken. You might not be in crisis mode, but it's something to work on yourself and to improve and to help make life just a little bit easier. And BetterHelp is here to get you connected with the perfect help. They just make it really easy to get rolling. They're the world's largest online therapy service. They've matched millions of people with professionally licensed and verified therapists 100% online. No waiting rooms, no traffic, no endless searching for the right therapist. So get unstuck with BetterHelp. Learn more and save 10% off your first month at BetterHelp.com/lockedon. That's BetterHelp.com/lockedon. The Bears defense feels like it's going to need some better help moving forward after maybe its worst performance of the season. I think definitely its worst performance of the season overall against the Dallas Cowboys. And I'm sure I mean, I know you heard a little bit of it in the broadcast, but I think it's going to be an ongoing thing. It's like, oh, they traded Robert Quinn, and then therefore that's why they gave up 42 points. And we talked about it on the podcast on Friday, that to me, the concern was more about, it's not like Robert Quinn was representing such a dynamic player that the level of talent on the field would be diminished greatly by losing Robert Quinn. Yes, he's very good, but to me, the concern wasn't like you lose Quinn and whatever you replace him with is going to be so much worse that the whole defense is bad. I don't think that's the explanation here, and I hope we don't fall for that as like, oh, well, you lose a potential future Hall of Fame pass rusher, and all of a sudden you give up 42 points. I don't think it's specifically because you don't have the player Robert Quinn as an X's and O's piece in your defensive scheme, but I wonder if there's some influence of not having Robert Quinn, the human being, Robert Quinn, the leader of your defensive line, Robert Quinn, the guy who Roquan Smith kind of referred to each other as like his brother, like a person that went from a stranger to an acquaintance to a friend to a best friend to a brother in the locker room. That if that doesn't affect some of the energy, some of the mental focus, some of the, just the capacity, the juice, the intangibles, right? That's what I think at most the Bears were missing from Robert Quinn. Not that Al-Quadin Muhammad didn't seem great to me. Travis Gibson had flashes here and there. Like, sure, they could have used Robert Quinn on that defensive line. I don't know that having Robert Quinn on the defensive line, X's and O's wise, saves you a touchdown or, in this game. I don't think they give up very many fewer points if Robert Quinn is out there in terms of his ability to rush the passer and stop the run. Maybe Robert Quinn being out there gives Roquan Smith a little more juice and has him more fired up instead of him largely disappearing in a game like this. I think he finished with 5 tackles, but it was like tied for 3rd or 4th on the defense. He just did not make impact plays on this defense. And again, did not look like a player who should be paid like the top linebacker in the NFL, continuing to kind of make his offseason contract negotiations murky. I mean, I believe Eddie Jackson was your leading tackler, which is a pretty poor reflection. Yeah, your 2 leading tacklers were Jackson and Brisker. When your safeties are your leading tackler, that stat can tell you a lot about where your defense is operating, especially when you give up 200 yards rushing on the ground. When your safeties are having to make those tackles, that's a big problem because then that means the running backs are getting back to where the safeties are. And some of that, I think, the Cowboys did a good job getting things going up tempo at times and trying to keep the Bears a little tired, especially early on there, because the Bears can kind of hold and be resilient in the second half. We've seen them be, disciplined in that regard, but the Cowboys, I think, early on kind of got them on their heels a bit, and that's how they opened up some of the scoring, particularly early there as well. But like in terms of the running game, right? So often it felt like the Cowboys with Pollard instead of Elliott, they ran more zone runs than I anticipated because they were more of a gap team with Elliott in there, but they mixed up their scheme a little bit more for Pollard and the rookie behind him. And whenever they'd start stretching those runs out, he'd get to the line of scrimmage, and the Bears would just have no second level, right? Like the linebackers are coming down, and the offensive linemen are meeting them, and they're not able to scrape over the top to get to where the running back is going to go. It almost becomes like the linebackers almost become at the line of scrimmage, and there's no one behind the line of scrimmage then to make the tackle once the running back gets through, except the safety, Eddie Jackson or Jaquan Brisker or both, whoever's back there. And like you saw on the later touchdown from Pollard, when Eddie Jackson was the last guy there and he missed the tackle in the red zone, Pollard walks into the end zone particularly easily there. That's not to say that all the blame then is on the linebackers, because part of the defensive line's job is to at very least occupy those blocks on the line of scrimmage to free up the linebackers to scrape and float over the top to then attack the running back when he comes through the hill. I certainly don't know how to divvy up that blame. Is that 50-50? Is that 60-40 or 70-30 on one group or the other? Without seeing the all-22 film, it's a little bit hard to assess that just yet. But there were so many of those plays where once the running back is in the hole, there's no one around to come over and come down because the linebacker's already up, engaged in blocks with the linemen, in some part because the linemen were able to get free to them, but in other parts because the linebackers are coming downhill and not able to get off of those and scrape over the top. So I think it was certainly a shared blame in that front seven for their inability to stop the run in that regard. And, in terms of the passing game, we saw Mike McCarthy go to the slants over and over and over again against a lot of times Kindle Vildor, sometimes Kyler Gordon. There's at least one against Jalen Johnson where he had a really nice pass breakup, but that was working for them. Those kind of quick slants into the middle of the field, they were able to pick up some chunk yardage that way. And it's a Bears defense that has some real talent deficiencies, especially in that front seven. And it's going to continue to be a challenge for them. And they need things like those Eddie Jackson turnovers to even kind of give them a chance, which is great play, disguised coverage, came over and attacked it downhill. Beautiful play by Eddie Jackson there. So there was some positive, I guess, in that regard, but needed a little more pass rush and certainly needed more physicality against the running game, but also going up against a pretty darn solid offensive line in Dallas that's going to give a lot of opposing defenses some trouble in that running game. It kind of leaves you feeling, I don't know, the Bears are in a weird spot right now, right? Where all of a sudden the offense is really good and the defense is really not. So we'll kind of reflect on what trajectory is and kind of where things might go from here after this loss next on Locked On Bears. This episode of Locked On Bears is brought to you by our friends at BlueNile. Whether you're looking to pop the question or if you have a milestone to celebrate or just want to let your love sparkle, BlueNile can help you make your celebrations even more memorable. Because BlueNile is the original online jeweler with the largest selection of independently graded diamonds and pieces priced significantly below traditional retailers. BlueNile has helped millions of couples create their perfect engagement ring, or if you're just looking for a fine piece of jewelry to commemorate a special milestone, BlueNile has jewelry experts on hand 24/7 to help you find just the right piece for you at any budget. And they have a 100% satisfaction guarantee. All BlueNile orders are insured, they ship for free, and in a discreet packaging as well to make sure that your special someone doesn't know what's inside when it arrives. Make your moment sparkle with BlueNile. Go to BlueNile.com and use our promo code LOCKEDON to save $50 on your purchase of $500 or more. That's BlueNile.com, code LOCKEDON to save $50 on your purchase of $500 or more. BlueNile.com, code LOCKEDON. Remember, like early in this season, this Bears offense, and it wasn't even that long ago, now that you think about it. I mean, even against the Washington Commanders just 2 or 3 games ago, the Bears offense couldn't do anything, right? They couldn't finish plays in the end zone. They had trouble moving the ball, lots and lots of 3-and-outs, and you were thrilled if the Bears could get to 17 points in a game, while on the other end, their defense was holding teams down. They let Carson Wentz get in the end zone once there, but they let the Commanders score 12, and the Giants scored 20, and the Texans scored 20, the 49ers scored 10, right? For the most part, the defense was holding up well enough that a reasonable offense should be able to, win those games. And yet now we get to this game and the defense, back-to-back games, the offense is scoring 33 points against the Patriots and 29 against the Cowboys, really firing on all cylinders here. And the defense, all of a sudden, 42 points at least directly responsible to them and 49 points overall as a team. And it's like, how do we go from bad offense and pretty good defense to bad defense and pretty good offense? Like, it's just kind of a weird, complete flip. Like, I don't know how this team dynamic changed so much, in both positive and negative directions with that mini bye. Like, it makes sense a little bit that, okay, the offense had a minute to take a step back and breathe and figure some things out and change some things for Justin Fields. So, like, the offensive improvement makes sense, but not a lot has really changed defensively, just except for the trade of Robert Quinn. And maybe this game's a little bit more of a fluke. I mean, we did see the defense struggle quite a bit against the Vikings, but held up more in the second half. And of course, they struggled against the Packers. I mean, they're just going to not be as good against some of the better offenses. And lo and behold, you have a fairly explosive Miami Dolphins offense next week coming to town. I think they're like top 5 either in yards or points or both, with Tyreek Hill is going to stretch this defense a little bit more. So you're kind of wondering, can that defense start to get its groove back? Because, like ideally or preferably, right, you've seen this defense play really, really well. And now we've seen this offense play really, really well. So in theory, they should be able to do both. They should be able to play offense really well and play defense really well. And that's the winning formula. Like, the fact that they have done both things well at different times suggests that they can do both things well. And in theory, you should be able to do both things well at the same time. There's not something about one that makes doing the other that much more difficult. at the same time, we've seen now the offense be really bad and the defense also be really bad. And there could be games when they do both at the same time as well. So it's not a guarantee that just like they're going to automatically figure it out in the most positive way. But at least, they started to get some different things rolling in this game. You got Cole Kmet, his first touchdown since 2020. He only had, that might have been his only catch in the game, but at least he got in the end zone and maybe got that mental hurdle out of the way there. You got N'Keal Harry, his first touchdown, really looked nice, using his body. He was kind of like a tight end. He was split out wide, but the route and sort of the roll on that play was kind of like a tight end, just kind of boxed him out, and Justin Fields put on his body and he got in the end zone. I was glad to see that kind of get rolling. Plus, you're the number one rushing team in the NFL and you added another 240 yards in this game, right? It feels like things are rolling a little bit more, even with an offensive line that has, depending on how you want to measure it, 2 or 3 backups in there due to injury. Michael Schofield, left guard, Riley Reif at right tackle. And when Lucas Patrick is healthy, Sam Mustafa will be a backup again. So sort of 3 backups in there. And even Tevin Jenkins came out for a little while and Dieter Iceland went in there. And you had 4 backups by definition in there on the offensive line. They weren't, from watching it the first time, they run block pretty well. Pass protection was, again, I think, okay. It wasn't disastrous, but it wasn't great. It wasn't very good, but it wasn't, they scored 29 points. Again, like they well enough to score 29 points. That's how the offensive line played there. And the other thing, game plan wise, Micah Parsons, no sacks. For the most part, limited the big time impact he would have. He just had, of course, the fumble recovery and ran it back for a touchdown, but like that's nothing you can scheme for, right? That's not him, beating you with some greatness. I mean, he didn't even force the fumble, right? I mean, he was there and did a great job at returning the fumble, but like, you don't like blame the coach's staff or whatever for being like, hey, they should have better prepared for Micah Parsons' ability to return fumbles. Like they mostly neutralized the impact he was able to have in this game. And I think that was very impressive as well. So if the defense can kind of remember how to tackle, be a little more physical in the running game, and maybe just something about the Cowboys in terms of skill set and matchups there ended up playing pretty poorly to the Bears' advantage there. But we've seen the Bears defense play better than this. So it feels like, something is churning here. Not that a big playoff run or anything is going to come, and that, we kind of projected like the Cowboys would probably be a really tough game to win. The Patriots were supposed to be a really tough game to win. The Dolphins probably going to be a really tough game to win as well. But at least this team gives us so much more hope. And again, like Justin Fields is playing really, really well against good teams, despite not having very much going on around him at all. Like, when the Bears were scoring so little early in this game, we were like, yeah, well, it's hard for Justin Fields to score a bunch of points when he has not very good receivers and not very good offensive line. The receivers and offensive line are still not very good. And Fields has put up, 62 points in 2 games back to back. That's the most encouraging part about this. The defense thing, the defense will, in the offseason, they'll add pieces or whatever. They got salary cap space. And like the rest of the offense with Fields eventually, you can build up. But it's like, how does Fields perform individually is really the most important thing and trending in just the perfect direction for this Bears team right now. So how he continues to strive will really be the most important thing for the season, regardless of 49 points given up and then you lose the game. But hey, the offense was rolling. And I thought there were times in this game too where the coaching staff didn't always give Fields there were a couple of times when they were running the ball when you would like to trust Fields a little bit more, let him play quarterback and not just hand it off on 3rd and 5 or whatever. But again, no complaints overall about what the offense did. And it's about figuring out what this defense can do to fix its mess right now. We'll try and take a closer look at what went wrong defensively on the All-22 film for tomorrow's podcast. So make sure you hit that subscribe button to keep up with all of our daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. Thanks for making the Locked On Bears podcast your first listen today, and hopefully every single day as well. If you're looking for your second listen now, be sure to check out Locked On Sports today. It's the biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions and big game recaps and the take of the day. Whatever you find your podcasts across all of sports, the Locked On Podcast Network is your team every day, and Locked On Sports today has all of sports, all the biggest stories right there in your podcast feed. So check that out for your second listen. Come on back tomorrow. Make Locked On Bears your first listen again tomorrow. And of course, you got to come on back for your next opportunity to bear down.